all the ideas from Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. This book urges us to choose only what truly matters and to discard everything else. The author, Greg McKeown, a former CEO and management consultant, argues that success doesn't come from multitasking or overload, but from focusing on a few key actions. McKeown developed the concept of essentialism by observing how even the smartest and most hardworking people often fail due to the phenomenon of hyper-opportunity when too many tasks pull them in different directions. The book is an attempt to provide tools for living consciously and effectively. Essentialism is worth reading to free yourself from the noise and focus on what's important. It will also help you save time and energy by directing them to the right place. Furthermore, reading this book will allow you to achieve greater results through systematic effort and conscious choice. Part 1. What is Essentialism? Chapter 1. Essentialism. The art of getting rid of the unnecessary. An introduction to the concept of essentialism as a philosophy that opposes multitasking and overload. The author explains that essentialism is not laziness, but a strategy of choice that allows you to focus on what matters most. Essentialism requires actively selecting actions, rather than passively completing all tasks. The key difference from minimalism, essentialism focuses on adding value, not just removing clutter. If you are a manager, instead of participating in 10 projects, choose one that will fundamentally improve the business and dedicate all your efforts to it. Essentialism is not about avoiding work, but about rethinking priorities. It's not about doing more, but about doing better. Chapter 2. From selectivity to essentialism. The author analyzes how to move from superficial selectivity, choosing from a list of tasks, to deep essentialism. This emphasizes the need for a systematic approach, not random decisions. Selectivity is the first step, but for essentialism, you need to create a system that automatically filters tasks. For example, predefined criteria for decision-making. If you are a student, instead of planning classes as it comes, create a schedule where 3 to 4 hours a day are allocated to key subjects and the rest of the time to secondary ones. Essentialism requires not only choice, but also rules that help maintain focus in the long term. Chapter 3. Core Principles of Essentialism. This chapter outlines the basic principles of essentialism, rejecting can-do, focusing on must-do, and creating a system instead of relying on effort. The absolute no principle. If a task doesn't align with priorities, refuse it without regret. Finding the essential point. Identify 1 or 2 actions that deliver 80% of the results. If you want to increase productivity, find one tool, for example, notebook planning, that provides 90% of the benefit, instead of constantly searching for the best app. The principles of essentialism are a practical toolkit that helps avoid scattering your efforts and direct energy where it's most needed. Overall conclusion for Part 1. Part 1. What is essentialism? Explains the essence of the concept, its distinction from other approaches, and its basic principles. Essentialism is a choice, not an accident. Its implementation requires systems, not spontaneous efforts. Rejecting the non-essential is a strategy for growth, not laziness. This part prepares the reader for the practical steps described in subsequent sections. Part 2. How to start essentialism. Chapter 4. The power of no. The author explains how saying no to non-essentials through categorical refusal is a crucial step towards essentialism. This emphasizes that no should not just be a word, but a strategy that frees up time and resources for what is important. Ask yourself, what will happen if I don't do this at all? If the answer is nothing critical, decline without regret. This helps avoid a common mistake, accepting tasks out of fear of missing out on something. If a colleague asks you to participate in a new project, but it will distract from your priorities, say, unfortunately, I have other tasks right now that require my full attention. An absolute no is not selfishness, but a necessary boundary that allows you to focus on what brings the most value. Chapter 5. Finding the essential point. This chapter explains how to find the point where efforts yield maximum results. The author claims that 5% of actions typically produce 80% of the overall outcomes. Make a list of all your tasks. Divide them into essential, yielding 80% of results, and non-essential. Eliminate or delegate secondary tasks to focus on key actions. If you're an entrepreneur, identify which product or service generates your main income. Invest all resources in improving it, and cut back on other areas. The essential point is a growth point, where even small efforts lead to big changes. You need to find it everywhere, in work, personal life, and thinking. Chapter 6, System, Not Effort. The author emphasizes that essentialism is not just a choice, but the creation of systems that automate key actions. This reduces reliance on willpower and motivation. They simplify choices, for example, predefined rules for task responses. They eliminate the need to make decisions here and now. An example of a system: a schedule where hours are set aside for important tasks and minor items are handled using templates. For email management, create a system. Respond to important emails within an hour. Archive or delete everything else. Systems are the skeleton of essentialism. They transform conscious choice into automated processes, making life simpler and more effective. Overall conclusion for Part 2. Part 2, How to Start Essentialism, is the practical section that describes the steps for implementing the philosophy into your life. The absolute no is a tool for freeing yourself from the non-essential. Finding the essential point helps you identify key actions. Systems replace effort, making focus a habit. This part shows that essentialism is not a theory, but concrete methods that can be applied immediately after reading. Part 3, Essentialism in Action. Chapter 7, Essentialism at Work. The author shows how to apply the principles of essentialism in the workplace, focusing on key tasks, delegating secondary ones, and creating systems that simplify goal achievement. Delegating tasks that can be assigned to others. G. Administrative work. Creating rules for time management. For example, the golden rule. Tackle the most important tasks during morning hours when you're most focused. Avoiding the hyper-opportunity phenomenon, shunning multiple projects in favor of one truly significant one. If you're a manager, instead of personally reviewing all employee reports, create a system for automatic data verification and dedicate your time to developing the company's strategy. Essentialism at work isn't laziness. It's an investment in what brings long-term benefit, even if it requires letting go of minor details. Chapter 8, Essentialism in your personal life. This chapter examines how essentialism helps find a balance between personal values and external obligations. The author argues that you should choose what is truly important to you, not to society or other people. Defining your own values, for example, family, health, hobbies, and letting go of anything that conflicts with them. Creating rituals that protect time for what matters. For example, a daily walk with children. Rejecting toxic relationships or activities that drain energy without benefit. If you value time with family, decline participation in evening corporate events that are not related to your goals. Essentialism in personal life is the freedom of choice based on awareness, not submission to external expectations. Chapter 9, Essentialism in Thinking. The author describes how essentialism changes one's approach to decision-making and perception of the world. This emphasizes the importance of critical thinking and abandoning templates in favor of deep analysis. The question, what would a genius do to find non-obvious solutions? Analyzing the essential point in any project to focus on key details. Rejecting multitasking in favor of deep concentration on one issue. If you are deciding whether to start a new business, ask, what would Steve Jobs do? This will help you discard ideas that do not bring innovation. Essentialism in thinking is a tool for growth that helps you see the essence rather than getting lost in details. Overall conclusion for Part 3. Part 3, Essentialism in Action, shows how to apply the philosophy in different areas of life: work, personal values, and thinking. At work, focus on key tasks and delegation. In personal life, choices based on your own values. In thinking, depth instead of superficiality. This part confirms that essentialism is not a theory, but a practical approach that can be adapted to any aspect of life. Part 4, Overcoming Obstacles. Chapter 10, Resistance to change. The author analyzes why people resist transitioning to essentialism. This discusses the reasons: fear of failure, the habit of multitasking, and a feeling of losing control. Acknowledge that fear is natural, but unfounded. Start with small experiments. For example, give up one task a week. Visualize the benefits. How change will improve your life. If you're afraid to break old habits, for example, checking email every 10 minutes, start by checking it only 3 times a day. Resistance is not an obstacle, but a sign that you are moving in the right direction. It should be met with gradual steps, not willpower. Chapter 11, Battling the Hyper-Opportunity Phenomenon. This section dissects the phenomenon of hyper-opportunity, when an excess of options projects tasks, solutions, distracts from what's essential. The author explains how to avoid FOMO, fear of missing out, and focus on a single path. Limit your choices to 1 or 2 key goals. Use filters. For example, ask yourself, will this bring me closer to my goal in a year? Eliminate sources of distraction, social media, unnecessary meetings. If you're planning to start a business, choose one product to launch instead of trying to cover all niches at once. Hyper-opportunity is not a blessing, but a trap. The ability to limit choices is key to success. Chapter 12, Discipline and Freedom. The author explains how discipline in essentialism brings not limitations, but freedom. It shows that conscious rules allow us to avoid chaos and anxiety. Rules that liberate, for example, fixed time for important tasks, eliminating the need to make thousands of small decisions. What to do, when to start. Focus on what provides long-term benefit, not instant gratification. If you want to write every day, establish discipline. Write for 2 hours in the morning and turn off your laptop in the evening. This will provide creative freedom without overload. Discipline is not slavery, but a tool that turns chaos into order and frees up time for what truly matters. Overall conclusion for Part 4. Part 4, Overcoming Obstacles, focuses on practical ways to implement essentialism in real life. Resistance is a natural stage. It needs to be overcome gradually. Hyper-opportunity is the main enemy of focus. It's conquered through choice and limitations. Discipline is the path to freedom, not to restrictions. This part concludes the book, showing that essentialism is not just a concept, but a lifestyle that requires mindfulness, courage, and systematic effort. This is such a wonderful book. I wrote down all the important points from this book, all the techniques and tools, and also made a step-by-step action plan based on the book. You can get all this in my private club, Place of Power. There you will find a ready-made, detailed text analysis with similar lists for hundreds of best-selling self-help books. Also, only there can you get an exclusive analysis of the newest best-selling books that are currently at the top of Amazon's sales charts. Join via the link in the description and enjoy.